It was a dark and stormy night when Detective Sarah Jones was called to investigate a murder at the sprawling estate of the wealthy businessman, Richard Kensington. When she arrived at the scene, she found Mr. Kensington lying dead on the floor of his study, with a bullet wound to the head. The room was in disarray, suggesting a struggle had taken place. As she pieced together the clues, Sarah's mind raced with possibilities. She had to question herself and her assumptions before she could make any conclusions. She wondered if the murder was a premeditated act or a crime of passion. Was Mr. Kensington involved in any shady business dealings that could have led to his death? Or was there someone close to him who had a motive for killing him? Sarah examined the bullet hole in the wall, trying to determine where the shot had come from. She noticed that there was a vase on a nearby table that had been knocked over, and she wondered if it could have been used to hide the sound of the gunshot. As she moved around the room, Sarah noticed a picture frame on the ground. She picked it up and saw that it was a family portrait of Mr. Kensington with his wife and 2 children. She wondered what kind of relationship he had with his family, and if there could have been any tension there that led to his murder. Sarah continued to examine the room, taking note of every detail. She found a torn piece of fabric on the floor near the window, and wondered if it could be a clue to the identity of the killer. Detective Sarah Jones had several suspects in mind. Mrs. Kensington, Mr. Kensington's wife, had a strained relationship with her husband, and there were reports of arguments and fights between the couple. She stood to gain financially from her husband's death. Mr. Kensington's business partners. Mr. Kensington had a reputation for being ruthless in his business dealings, and there were several people who had motive to harm him, such as competitors or disgruntled partners. The staff at the manor, the staff at the estate had reported that Mr. Kensington was harsh with them, paid them low wages, and made them work long hours. They may have had a motive to harm him. A burglar. The disarray of the study suggested that a struggle had taken place. It's possible that Mr. Kensington was killed by a burglar who had broken into the estate to steal something valuable. Detective Sarah Jones spent the next few days poring over the evidence and interviewing witnesses. She discovered that Mr. Kensington was not well liked by anyone. His family members, including his wife and children, all had strained relationships with him. The staff at the manor also complained about his harsh treatment, low pay, and long working hours. As Sarah dug deeper, she found that there were several people with motives to kill Mr. Kensington. His business partner, who was angry about a recent deal gone wrong, was a prime suspect. Additionally, the victim's estranged brother, who had been cut out of his will, was also a likely suspect. Sarah's investigation also led her to discover that one of the staff members, the housekeeper, had a history of violent behavior and a criminal record. She seemed to be hiding something, and Sarah made a mental note to look into her further. After a thorough investigation, Detective Sarah Jones was able to piece together the events leading up to the murder of Richard Kensington. She discovered that Mr. Kensington was not well liked by anyone, including his family members, who had strained relationships with him. The staff at the manor also complained about his harsh treatment, low pay, and long working hours. Through interrogating the suspects, Sarah was able to narrow down the list of potential killers. It was revealed that Mr. Kensington had been involved in illegal business dealings, including money laundering and extortion, and had made enemies in the criminal underworld. One of these enemies, a notorious gang leader, was eventually identified as the prime suspect. Mr. Kensington's wife had a strained relationship with her husband, and there were reports of arguments and fights between the couple. She stood to gain financially from her husband's death. Mr. Kensington's business partners. Mr. Kensington had a reputation for being ruthless in his business dealings, and there were several people who had motive to harm him, such as competitors or disgruntled partners. Mr. Smith. He may have had a grudge against Mr. Kensington for mistreating his wife or for other reasons, and he may have had access to the estate as an employee. He could have had financial motives for the murder, being promised a share of Mrs. Kensington's inheritance. A burglar. The disarray of the study suggested that a struggle had taken place. It's possible that Mr. Kensington was killed by a burglar who had broken into the estate to steal something valuable. The staff at the estate had reported that Mr. Kensington was harsh with them, paid them low wages, and made them work long hours. They may have had a motive to harm him. Mrs. Kensington and Mr. Smith had carefully planned the murder. They had been having an affair for some time and both had grown tired of Mr. Kensington's controlling and abusive behavior. They decided to act on their mutual hatred for him and eliminate him once and for all. They had planned the murder meticulously, making sure to cover their tracks as much as possible. Mr. Smith had entered the study through a window, knowing that Mr. Kensington would be alone and vulnerable at that time of night. He shot him with a silenced gun, while Mrs. Kensington provided a fake alibi. After the murder, they staged the scene to make it look like a burglary gone wrong. They scattered papers on the floor, overturned furniture, and even shot a bullet into the wall. They believed that this would be enough to throw off suspicion and make it look like an outside intruder had committed the crime. Further evidence was gathered, including CCTV footage and witness testimony, which pointed to the suspect's guilt. The suspect was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder of Richard Kensington. In her report, Sarah noted the importance of thorough investigation techniques and the need to explore all possible leads. She also emphasized the crucial role of eyewitnesses and forensic evidence in building a strong case against the suspect. The case of Richard Kensington's murder was solved, bringing justice to his family and closure to the community.